Tech News Weekly is sponsored by Hover.com. Domain names made simple. Go to gfq.hover.com and get 10% off your entire purchase. And by Stitcher Radio. Listen on the go via the Stitcher mobile app. For more information, go to stitcher.com/GFQ.
Starting Tech News Weekly in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome, everybody, to another Tech News Weekly. I am your host, Andrew Zarian, and as always, I'm joined by a panel of great tech experts. To my right, no, to my left, sitting in the virtual world, is Eric Lanigan. How you doing, Eric?
I'm good. How are you?
My right, your left. Your left, my right.
What's up? How's it going?
Not bad. If my mouse will work, that would be excellent, but it is not working, so now I have no mouse. But and then to my left in the virtual world is Suncast. How you doing, Suncast? Hey, Suncast.
Can you not hear me?
Yes, I could hear you. I am all screwed up, I'm telling you.
Okay.
I'm so messed up right now. You know what happened, and I'll explain it to everybody.
You need more drugs.
Yes.
We just have to keep you pumped full of drugs in order to operate, I think.
That's what everybody says. Spencer says that. Spencer says, I just want to keep you pumped with some sort of like adrenaline thing just to keep you going. It's okay. In 40 years, if you just collapse, it's okay. I'll deal with that. No,
yeah.
What we did a format here.
We just got to make sure that we can clone you.
Yeah, you just need multiple versions of me. No, we formatted and, you do all the testing that you can and you always make sure you backed everything up and everything's working but when you format. But there's always something that you forget. There's always something. And that something was plugging in the right wire.
And
that has a lot to
images.
do. And adding the images and making sure Eric's audio's working. And now my mouse isn't working. It's a whole thing.
See, that's why I quit doing that restoring from images or made it much less, because you always forget the little things, the little minute settings across all the apps and all the programs that you painstakingly had to look up and put in and trial and error. You think, oh, I only have I got Photoshop, I got Office, I can reinstall that easily. And it's like, no, it's all these other shareware apps and little tiny kernel extensions and all these things you forget about.
Well, our soundboard system where we pot up all the theme songs for the shows, that's sitting in a software called Soundboard on the Mac, and it's great, but I always forget to back up the actual soundboard. So I have to manually input all the sound clips after we're done. So, it takes weeks and weeks of compiling the soundboard, but it's a pain, so I bet I should start backing it up. But that's something that we, us enthusiasts
Backups
like to
are
do.
Good.
Yeah, I know. Unfortunately for me, I don't remember to back anything up, and it doesn't happen. Do you format a lot, Eric? Do you do this every 6 months? You wipe everything and start fresh?
I might do it when Mountain Lion comes out.
Yeah,
I think last time I did it was for Snow Leopard, and then I got the MacBook Air 2 years ago. So that was that's what also happens sometimes, right? You trade in a machine or something, or you get a new one, and then that's an easy way to start from scratch.
It makes such a difference. It really does. When you start over, it's like a brand new computer.
Yeah.
It's a good time because the new MacBook Pros will be coming out. Mountain Lion is coming out in a couple of weeks now, right?
Keeping my fingers crossed for a Retina display. I love that thing.
There's a Facebook petition that's going out now that MacBook Pro users are wanting Apple to release information about when and if they'll be getting refreshed MacBooks.
They're going to release that information at WWDC, I'm sure, in a week.
They can't wait.
A week and a half, 2 weeks. They could wait for that.
Well, then again, I think didn't people think that they were going to talk about Macs on the last 2 WWDCs, and they stuck entirely to iPhone?
Yeah, yeah. Talking about the iPhone, and I guess we'll go right into this. The iPhone 5, which is set to launch who knows when.
If it'll actually be the iPhone 5. We don't know. They might just call it the new iPhone.
Which I honestly think that. I think Eric also said it, that they're not going to call it probably a number thing. They're going to call it the new iPhone.
Right.
They should. If they call it the new iPhone, I will call it the iPhone 5. I will do that as protest.
You know what they might do, actually? They might do the iPhone 4G.
Well,
and the
I
following
don't
one
know.
could be the iPhone. Because what's going to happen now? I know we have the new, we have the new iPad, but are they going to call it the new iPad every single refresh?
Actually, Andrew, that would be a good reason to call it the new iPhone, because what are they going to call it? The iPhone 5 4G?
The iPhone 5 4G.
What is the
yeah.
other alternative there?
I don't think we really have an option, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we really
I get
don't.
so frustrated, though, because we need adjectives to describe the things we talk about. We use language as human beings. We require adjectives. So if you don't have a numeral, you go to these crazy things like you have on the bottom of your MacBook that says, MacBook Pro 2008 version, this with this kind of flash drive and thumb drive and all the, and it's like just a number is fine.
But I guess that's why they're not doing it. That's probably why they're not going to continue this. Because can you imagine in a couple of years it's going to be the iPhone 9, and that sounds ridiculous at that point.
Yeah, Mac OS 10, Mac OS 11, or is it going to be Mac OS 10 11.0? We don't know.
Yeah.
It hasn't happened yet.
Well, that's one interesting thing that they've done with OS 10. They've kept it going. They've kept the OS 10 thing going on for the last 10 years. So it's very
when
interesting.
Steve Jobs introduced that in 2000, he said, or maybe it was 99 when he first put it out, he said, we've had the Mac OS has served us well for the first 16 years. It's going to get us the next 16 years. I didn't actually believe that it was going to last 16 years, but I think it really is.
It might actually. We've lost Suncast, by the way, so until he calls back, I know we're having some Skype issues with him, so we'll just continue. But they announced that they haven't announced, but speculations are leading to a 3.95-inch display, so let's round it off to 4 inches. I think it's good enough, right? 4-inch display for the iPhone?
For the iPhone, yeah. What's the latest? Because I've heard conflicting rumors about whether it's going to be a different aspect ratio. Are they going to go 16:9, or are they going to make the width of the phone bigger as well?
So we, by the way, we have Suncast back on the line, so chime in anytime, Suncast. So they're saying that they're adding 176 extra pixels. The new resolution of the iPhone will be 640 by 1136. Is that right? That cannot be right. Yeah, 640 by 1136. The current Retina displayed iPhone 4S is 640 by 960. So they're adding more pixels. So what is this going to do for games? Eric, would it affect the way that these games have been made, these apps have been made? How is it going to affect?
It'd be huge. It'd be huge. It would cause the biggest fragmentation we've known yet for the iPhone. So I really hope they don't do that. That's been arguably their biggest advantage over the competing Android devices, the fact that they've had the exact same screen size and the exact same resolution, except for the Retina display, which just easily doubled the same resolution in both dimensions, which is very easy for developers to handle.
But now it's not doubling; it's actually moving pixels. I mean, it's a little different. They're adding more.
The only way I can picture them doing this that wouldn't anger all the developers is if they made it into some kind of compatibility mode whereby the regular screen would kind of shift up a bit and the bottom would reveal, and that extra 25% of screen that you get from the 16:9 aspect ratio would not be the application, but instead would be some kind of buttons or controls at the bottom.
Much like Android.
Much like Android. But how does Android compensate for this? I guess some apps look great and some apps don't, right?
Well, that's the whole problem, is that you have all these developers, and their issue with developing applications is that there's so many Android devices that have different specifications that they have to build their application to support each and every single device. And that becomes a very big pain in the butt to do in order to make sure that your app is compatible with thousands of Android devices, because there's so many of them that don't stick to any sort of standard. It's whatever the manufacturer wants to make, they can do it. Whereas the iPhone's stuck with basically the same standard dimensions for everything.
Yeah, because currently, I guess this is what the WWDC conference is going to be about. This is the most interesting part about developing this device and it is for developers. I'm sure a lot of them are asking this question: what are they going to do with what's going to be their standard? Because you could turn around and you could see Apple turning around and saying, listen, if you're not meeting these requirements, I'm sorry, you're out of the store.
It's a weird problem for Apple to have, and I suspect they don't really know what the right thing to do is either. I think part of their success has been maintaining specific screen sizes, and I do think that for computing, like for application use, even for games, anything where you're using the iPad in a portrait mode or any portrait mode, even on the iPhone.
Yeah.
It makes sense not to have it be too long, like the Android devices do. But Apple is also a media company. They want to sell movies and TV shows and all this 16:9 content, which looks sad on a 4:3 iPad. It makes you think like you got a bad screen for watching a movie on. And I think that makes consumers. I think Apple's worried about what consumers think when they see that relative to a beautiful 16:9 Android tablet that might look like a portable movie player by comparison.
But you know what it is about the Android tablets? I was playing around with one of the newer ones. I think it's the Transformer, the Asus that they have. And it's 16:9, but it just doesn't feel comfortable to me.
Right. It's oblong.
It's very, I mean, you can't really do like a one-handed thing with it because the balance is a little off on them. I don't think Apple's going to go over to, an 11-inch, for example, or make it into a widescreen device. I don't see them doing this.
Yeah.
At least for now.
Yeah, I agree. I think they should stick with what they've got because, again, it's the best for developers. They want to have an app economy. The apps are what's selling the iPad and iPhone over the Android competitors. I think they should stick with that better aspect ratio that they have.
Yeah, last week, the Wall Street Journal reported that Apple was buying 4-inch displays earlier in the month, and I think Mac 9 to 5 also had a screenshot, but another screenshot leaked, and they were saying how it's the screen for the touch, for the iPod Touch, and it was a 4-inch display. So if they were going to move everything over, this is the time they're going to be doing it because they've milked this small display to 3.5-inch display for a while now, and they've kind of fallen behind as far as standards go for screen size. Are you, not to dwell on the Apple stuff too much, but this will be huge for them to release. The other rumor is that it's going to come out in October and not now.
What, the phone?
The phone, yeah. The rumors have been coming out that today, especially, that it's an October release.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, just because they've done that already. Again, though, I think it would make more sense to have the iPad come out in the fall because that's more of the Christmas product than the phone is because of the contracts that the phone always has. You're always upgrading from an existing contract with a phone, unlike a tablet.
Yeah, to kind of stick with the mobile phones, Windows Phone Marketplace now requires Windows 7.5, Windows Phone 7.5, to have access to the marketplace. A week ago, they were talking about how older versions of Windows Phone will no longer... Windows Mobile obviously has shut down their app store, their marketplace, and now they're saying only 7.5 devices will have access to the Windows Phone Marketplace. Are there phones out there with only Windows Phone 7 and not 7.5?
That's what I want to know is whether or not there's actual Windows Phone devices out there that haven't received the update yet from carriers.
I think there are, unless I haven't kept up with this. I think there might be quite a bit that haven't.
I don't.
That's the objection that I have with this. I think it's a great idea, and I think it's a good move for Microsoft to do this. My problem is that there could be, I don't know 100% for sure or not, but if there are devices out there that are running Windows Phone 7 and haven't received the updates because of the carrier, that is a problem to me. Yeah, they do say that you can go and download the update on your own, but if your carrier is preventing you from doing that, well, then there's an issue there between both Microsoft and the carrier.
Yeah, I mean, this is not a bad thing. I don't necessarily consider this to be an awful thing. They're talking about Snap and Legacy OS support, but Windows Phone 7 is not that old. And this is pretty surprising of Microsoft to cut access for that.
That sounded funny to me, too. They're going to stop the legacy support, legacy extend. When Microsoft says legacy support, they're usually talking about parallel ports. They're talking about 30 years ago. They're not usually talking about, oh, yeah, this phone that we sold you 6 months ago.
I think they're still supporting NetMeeting.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean...
This sort of sounds like something like Apple would do. The only problem is that Apple has complete control over what operating software and version you're running on your iPhone.
And that's why they're
iPad.
so successful. And to be honest, that is why it's a totally different experience if you're in the Apple environment or if you're in anything else. The fact that Apple controls the updates really goes a long way because you do not want to be that person that doesn't get your update. I mean, that's ridiculous. Talking about updates, I have a Samsung Galaxy Note here. And half the people that have this phone on AT&T have gotten an update and half haven't. And we don't know when the rest are going to get it.
Oh
Right, and
man,
that's the other
so
good thing
totally
is
arbitrary.
I
The
like
same
Yeah.
phone, same carrier.
Hold, hang
creator
on
of
one
this
second,
is-
Sunkist. Hold on. What was that, Eric?
Oh, I was saying same phone, same carrier, but only half have gotten it, just arbitrarily.
Some people have gotten it, some people haven't, and there's no time or release date on when the rest will get it. And I've been waiting here,
Sucks.
and people have had it for weeks.
But that's the problem with Android is that there's no rhyme or reason as far as when and how you get updates to the device. I like the fact that Microsoft is saying we have to do this and we're doing this. I
Yeah.
like that part. In comparison to Android, I'm just worried that not everybody's going to be able to do that. What happens when you do have a situation where you have a carrier and several devices with that carrier that have not been able to update to Windows Phone 7.5?
Yeah. Well, so what are they going to do? I guess you're stuck, right? You're not getting access to the marketplace. It's done. Go get a new phone.
Yeah, I mean that's
So-
that's going to be awful.
Not to shift gears away if you're still want to talk about Windows Phone, but just bringing it all back into the other Google news, the third platform on our list today. They're going to have, you can introduce the story, Android 5.0, Jelly Bean, all this stuff. I'm wondering, what are they going to have that's really going to be a compelling thing over the iPad? It's sort of like the iPad's a market in itself, isn't it?
Well, there's two stories in this, right? I mean, that's the thing. It's two stories. One, it's the fact that Jelly Bean will be the next version, and they're going to we don't really know much about what they're going to push from there. And the next one is that they're releasing a Google tablet, an official Google tablet. But we've heard this for 2 years now.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious on why they haven't released it yet. What's the reason behind this? It's weird to me in a way.
Well, and I think part of the reason might be, or not a reason, but, the question I'm asking is like, I think Google is delaying because they don't know what they could do for a Google branded tablet that would really compete with the iPad. It's so tough for these guys, for anyone else in the world to compete with Apple on price, the way that Tim Cook has optimized their overseas manufacturing.
Well, you know what
chain.
it is, Eric? It's multiple factors. I wish it was just, they have a Retina display and we don't, or they have battery life and we don't. It's so many things. 1, the display. 2, the size. 3, the battery. 4, the weight. 5, the environment. The operating system, the easy to use system that Apple has created. It's an uphill battle when you're trying to match everything, and when you don't have, I guess if you're missing one of those factors, it's going to affect your sales, and that's one of the things that Google has been suffering with.
I also think Google has gotten, I think they screwed up by getting too far away from their core principles. Google has tried to become an Apple as far as their mobile technologies go. They've tried to become Facebook as far as Google Plus goes. In the interest of doing both of those things, they've gotten away from their original mission of making everything on the web, make everything open, make everything based on open standards like HTML5. They tried to become very proprietary. Google Plus, I mean, I said way before they even introduced that I thought I hoped what Google would do would be to have a way where it's more democratized, decentralized, not to make a Facebook clone where all your content is hosted and funneled through Google, but that's what they did.
Well, and Stunkcast and I have discussed this multiple times on
Stuncast.
Stuncast. We've discussed this multiple
words
times.
again.
I know. I'm not drinking, and that's bad. We've discussed this multiple times about why hasn't anybody been able to step to the plate? The closest match that the iPad has had is the Kindle Fire, and it is not a competitor. I mean, you're just talking match in the sense that it's sold devices, and it's sold devices because it's inexpensive and people bought it. But if you compare the two, there's no comparison between the iPad and this tablet. The Kindle Fire.
Here's the thing: is even if they are coming out with a Google branded tablet, Google does not have the best track record when it comes to releasing actual hardware, as is with the case of the Chromebook and Google TV. Those devices have not had a very good success rate, in my opinion. So if they do come out with a Google tablet, is this something that's actually going to be really good, that's going to be successful, or is it going to be in the same class as Google TV and everything else, the Chromebooks, because they were not very good?
Well, this goes back into what we've said multiple times, and that's Google's core principle. Eric said they should be sticking to their core principle, but their core principle has also been this beta mentality. Release it and fix it over time. And when you have a product that is going to the consumer, you really can't have that mentality. You can't put out an incomplete device like Google TV and Android. They've been very lucky with
It's almost like
Android.
they were spoiled when Gmail came out and they kept it in beta for so long, but everybody loved using Gmail even though it was in beta.
Yeah, because it was free.
I think the issue is you can't be in beta if it's a product that people have to buy. I think it's easy to do that when it's a free web service, but as soon as it's a physical piece of hardware you had to shell out hundreds of dollars for and plunk on your desk, it's like that's harder than say, well, that was just an experiment. You really need to upgrade to this new one.
Yeah, so the rumor that they're having, and they're going to unveil it at Google I/O, which is the 27th, I believe, of June, will be a 7-inch tablet that will launch in July. So, I mean, this is fairly quick and recent. You know, this is going to be now. I'm very surprised by that this report is coming out. And Asus is helping them out, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, if they remember that anything that's Google branded would still have to be made by someone else, and if someone like Asus or Samsung were to make it, you know, these companies, they don't want to. Microsoft's in the same boat, right? People have speculated, should Microsoft make their own Microsoft branded phone, as sort of a white label design, as opposed to this is from HTC, this is from LG, that kind of thing, from Microsoft, like the Zune was. But you know that Google and Microsoft run a very big risk of alienating and really angering their customers, because they first told them you can make money off your hardware by promoting our software platform.
Yeah.
So then it would be unfair for them to say, well, now that the customer base is used to our software, we're going to turn around and have the hardware profit margin for us too. And now here's the Google branded hardware to go with your Google branded software.
Well, something that's not in the notes is that it was officially completed. The Motorola Mobility acquisition by Google, that was completed this week and was approved this week. So it is official. Motorola Mobility is now owned by Google. And the fact that, you know, if I was a hardware manufacturer for Google and I was putting an Android phone, I would be really scared at this moment, because they could turn around anytime and say, you know what? You guys are nobody's getting the Google experience. It's all going to be Motorola phones, and we're going to control the type of hardware is put out by Motorola, and it's going to smoke all of you.
Yep.
Or what they might do is turn around and say, okay, you know what? If you want the Google experience and you want the updates on a regular basis, much like how Apple's doing it, only Motorola Mobility phones.
For the first part, I go back to my argument about how Chromebook and Google TV hasn't gone very well for Google. So if they are going to go and make their own hardware, well, then they have that same problem again, where they're releasing hardware that nobody really wants.
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, I'm curious to see what they're going to release. This has been delayed multiple times. The first time we reported the story here at the network was probably November of 2010. So this has been a 2-year story that we have not heard of or seen. Another 2-year story, and they're gearing up for some sort of release, is the Apple TV. News is coming out that they're going to be debuting in December. And here's a little inside information. Not inside information, I shouldn't say that. A little inside baseball talk. If any podcaster that's on iTunes knows that recently, a couple months ago, iTunes put out a documentation saying that all resolution for imaging, podcast, artwork must be 1200 by 1200 in order to be featured. And we all automatically thought, well, that's probably for the iPad, and that's probably for the high-res display. That's why they're doing it. No, maybe 3 or 4 weeks later, they put out another one saying 3 weeks later, they put out another one saying, no. Forget about the 1200. Now it has to be 1400 by 1400. And I'm thinking they probably want that for the new Apple TV. I mean, that's a pretty high resolution for, podcast artwork. So in my opinion, I think they're preparing for this Apple TV. News is coming out that, who was it? I think it's Piper Jeffries that reported it, that it's probably going to cost between $1,500. Does
anybody even know who that is?
It's a group that analyzes certain trends and things happening.
Okay.
It's a group that gets quoted even though they have really no inside
information. They have no information.
Whatsoever.
Yeah. Gene Munster is the person who actually reported.
Well, that's why I'm asking them. Like, you say the name, but then does anybody even know who that person or
no? They always do. I had to deal with someone was asking me about some story from a Boy Genius report about someone with inside information about that Apple's going to build out their own cell phone network. And the more I researched it, it was just some analysts that they quoted. These people don't know anything. They're just guessing based on numbers, and usually they have a bad feel for how Apple works as a company.
Well, it's an investment group that kind of researches certain trends. So I guess they have some sort of information from somewhere, but who knows? You never know where this stuff is coming from. but they're reporting that it's probably going to cost between $1,500 and $2,000 and going to range between 42 inches and 55 inches. And this is over the typical range of $700 to $1,400. You know what? $1,500 for a 42-inch Apple TV? Not bad. I can see people buying that.
That's a little expensive
I've changed my
for a
tune on this.
42
I think that it might make sense. I don't think it would be a significant business for Apple, like to really get into the TV market. But I think they might do it the same way that they've quote unquote gotten into the desktop monitor market. They buy a best of breed panel from the whatever company they feel is doing the best job with color reproduction and consistency across the display. That's why Apple displays are often ranked as the best in breed, and then selling it for a premium. So they could do that. I mean, even if it's not sold for too much of a premium, even if it's almost a zero profit product for Apple, which I doubt, but even if it is, that would still be, a nice Apple branded product placement to have in your living room and remind you of how great your Apple products are.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of changing my tune on this as well. At first, I was saying, it's way too expensive. Who's going to buy it? Maybe a couple of people here and there that are hardcore home theater guys, or the hardcore Apple fan, but. $1,500, you could get a TV here. You're going to have Apple, whatever they're going to have on there. I'm sure they're going to pack it with the iOS experience. So it might not be a bad thing, and a lot of people might buy this. But new reports coming out, December release date for this. We'll see what happens with that. To kind of move on to the other story, HP has cut 27,000 jobs, profits tumbling 31% in the second quarter. Last year was the first time that we saw HP, really starting these cutbacks and really starting to chop certain things. They were going to totally leave the PC division. They were going to go into cloud services, much like how IBM is doing it. They were going to support enterprise. They took that back. They released the press release, but now we're seeing they're taking a big hit. Are the days of HP and these massive computer companies starting to kind of dwindle and they're going to start cutting back? I know, the days of HP, Gateway, Dell all competing for a certain market, they're kind of slowing down now. And I don't know where this leaves a company like HP. Is it that they got too bloated? Is it that they're not selling the computers? Is it that they're not making the money that they want to make with the computers? What do you think, Eric?
Well, it's interesting because also there were stories about people want Michael Dell to step down as CEO of Dell because they were in a similar boat, right? They tried to get into enterprise servers, and Dell and HP make a lot of servers, and they sell, big iron to server farms and people running big data outfits. But besides that, the consumer desktop PC market has dried up so much. I partly blame Microsoft because they haven't had new operating systems to give people a compelling reason to buy new hardware. In the last 20 years, we've had like 3 main Windows releases, one of which was skipped by almost everybody. And the profit margins, they can't compete with the Asian manufacturers. That's the other thing. People aren't buying their product, and when they are, they're buying it for already razor-thin profit margins.
I mean, when you're buying, you could go to any one of these stores right now and buy a computer that normally would have been about $1,000, but now it's like $499, and everybody's selling it at that. They're not really making the margins that they want to make. You're absolutely right. But
right.
they've also gotten bloated.
It's almost weird to remember that there was a time when you could go to CompUSA and buy not even wholesale, but actually marked up products off their shelf, go home, assemble it yourself, and still come out ahead over what you'd pay for Dell or HP to ship you one. That's changed so much now. No one even thinks of building their own PCs unless they're such a high-end gamer that they have to spec it out to ridiculous extremes.
Another problem is that these companies have gotten really bloated.
Yes.
And it's awful that they have to cut 27,000 jobs, but they've also expanded and expanded and expanded, and there has to be a time that they have to cut all these jobs and kind of get smaller because it's a totally different world. It's not one or two companies that are dominating sales. You have so
I'm in
many
the same
different
boat
options.
as you, Andrew, in the fact that I understand. It's sad that they're getting rid of 27,000 jobs. That's awful. But at the same time, I kind of feel like that HP is one of those companies that probably has a lot of people that it doesn't necessarily need. And for it to survive as a company, it needs to start laying people off. They're at that point now where it's somewhat of a survival mode. In order for HP to keep moving forward, it has to jettison some of its heavier elements.
Yeah.
How interesting that the only company that really made the leap from PCs to like from the 90s era desktop PCs into today's mobile era is really Apple. It
And
was
they
almost
were
by
dead.
accident. If you read the stories about how they
Yeah.
came up with the iPod and really shifted almost by accident into being a mobile device company.
And this was a company, Eric, that was, I mean, they were predicting the end of Apple.
Right.
I mean,
and it's funny too because their PCs, meaning their MacBook Airs, even have slowed down in sales almost accordingly with the rest of the market. They're doing better than the rest of the market for surely. But yeah, it's almost by chance kind of that they came up with the iPod and then the iPhone and that iPod product line exploded the way it did and created iTunes and on from there. Really took them in such a different direction that their desktop PC former competitors have not been able to transition to.
Yeah. You know, since we're on the subject of losing money, last week, the Facebook's IPO, we were predicting what would happen. And last week I predicted, and this just shows you how unpredictable the stock market is, and I pride myself with knowing stocks. I had said by the end of the month, that stock will be at $42.
Yes.
And
We have that on record.
We do. And somebody called me an idiot on YouTube, and they go, well, wow, you're an idiot. The stock hit $31 today. And this is a company, you know, in a week, in less
It's
than
down
a
like
week,
18%.
it has fallen. And this just shows you how unpredictable the stock market is, how unpredictable all these analysis that people do and these experts, nobody really knows a thing. And people are losing a lot of money.
There seems to be some extra factors here in driving that price down. One is which that NASDAQ, the stock market that Facebook actually trades on, came out over the weekend and did say that, yeah, we had some glitches and we weren't able to show changes and cancellations as quickly as we needed to be. And so I think that played a hand in it. And so now everybody's like, well, nobody should buy Facebook stock. They're still having technical issues with it. Why would you want to buy it? You can't do anything with it. If you want to trade it, if you want to change it, you want to do anything with it, it's going to take forever for those changes to come up.
They've also said Citigroup lost $20 million due to the NASDAQ error. $20 million they lost because of the error in the system. So,
well, let's be clear though, because I think if we're talking about the same company, they lost 20 million off the little errors that they voluntarily decided to take the brunt of for their customers.
Yeah.
But in exchange, they made, I think, billions off of the initial IPO. Right.
Oh, the initial IPO.
Instead of making this much, they made this much.
Yeah. They made a lot from the initial IPO, but. Where do you see the stock going, Eric? I mean, this is an interesting thing. This is a company that people were saying this is going to be the next Google. The stock is just going to go shooting up, and it's taken quite a tumble from the start of the week.
Yeah, I mean, I saw this coming. I mean, I did expect just from the day trader market, I expected it to pop and do well in the short term. But I always said, you know, they're rated as, or they're valued at 65 times what they earn in a year. So that's, I mean, how long would they have to be around, or how much growth could they sustain to actually make that up?
They would have to have a lot of growth by the end of the year.
Say what?
They would have to have a lot of growth by the end of the year to keep that.
Compare that to Apple, who's valued at 12 times their earnings, and Google 10 times, Facebook 65 times their earnings. I just don't see them experiencing that much growth. I think it's accurate, and people say they may already be at the pinnacle of their success.
Yeah, well, where
that's just it. Is that you're talking about an internet company, and in large part, especially thanks to the .com boom and all of that stuff, the tech boom back in the 90s, people I think are still somewhat leery about internet companies, especially like Facebook, that does have somewhat of a troubled past in terms of its user base and its user disagreeing with them in certain flops that they've had.
Well, in my opinion, the user base is going to continue to grow. I mean, eventually it's going to slow down because the rate of people using computers is not quadrupling and by the millions every year. So eventually it's going to reach some sort of plateau, and they're going to have to create more revenue. Some of the revenue sources that Google is starting to slow down with, like their AdSense.
Who's to say that they don't end up being like MySpace, and in 2-3 years something better comes along?
Because there's too much. Well, you know why? I honestly think that there's too much. And this is the conspiracy theories. There's too much money tied into this company to let it fail, like how MySpace failed. I think there's more. I think there's more key players. I think the people also that had MySpace at the time.
It just won't be as abrupt.
Yeah, I think it might slow down a little bit, but I don't think it'll just be this crashing thing. And way too many people are tied into this environment. Way too many people are tied into this environment. The only big things that could possibly affect where the company goes is privacy and security concerns and data leaks. You know, things like that will eventually start
but if
biting
you look
it
at some of the other companies, and Instagram is a very good example of this, where there's a new service that comes along, and instantly everybody flocks to that service. Instagram, Pinterest are two good examples of this, where all of a sudden these companies come out of nowhere and somebody starts talking about it, and like other media companies pick up on this, and soon everybody wants to be on this website service.
Well, I guess you end up buying them like Facebook did.
I think it's interesting because I felt like, I don't know if this is totally accurate, but the sense I got was that the nail in the coffin for MySpace was when the Facebook movie, The Social Network, came out. I feel like before that, you still saw lots of musicians and lots of niche people, not necessarily personal pages, but lots of personalities and other people using MySpace. And as soon as that movie came out, all talks of MySpace ended, and everyone thought, well, I guess Facebook is the new king.
Yeah. Well, you know what else also played a big part in Facebook's success? And this is going to sound a little bizarre, but I think elitism amongst college kids and non-college people, I think that played a huge factor in the success of Facebook, because it was locked out. I mean, you had to be in college. You needed to have a .edu to have it. And I remember people were selling .edus, their email addresses on eBay for people to sign up for Facebook. So I think the fact that they locked so many people out for a while attributed to that boom that they had once they opened it up for people. Also, MySpace at the time became, you know, there was a little bit too customization of MySpace, and I think that also hurt MySpace when you would go to all these pages and it had 1,000 things. It became cluttered.
And bulletin spam.
Yeah, I mean, it became bad with that.
Oh man, that was the worst. Bulletin spam.
MySpace was awful to begin with. I think the reason why MySpace was successful is because they had a younger core. You know, you were able to be on there at 13, 14, 15, 16. I think Facebook was a little different, but listen, I don't think Facebook's going to fall apart within the next, couple of years. Maybe a decade we could see something change, but this is a company that has way too much money tied into it right now. It has way too much information about people, and they could create revenue from every part of this.
It will be interesting to see if they start creating revenue off of their, I would suspect, unmatched trove of data of personal information. I don't really know what legally they can sell, and they'd have to come up with ways to anonymize that data. I mean, in some ways they are. They're selling that to advertisers and apps already, but I mean like to really sell to big analytical firms or other big data mining companies. It seems like there's a lot there that could sell off if they need to make more revenue.
Yeah.
But I found it interesting over the course of this IPO roadshow to see the difference in analysts saying that Facebook stock will go up because people like Facebook and will use Facebook even more. That's not the same thing as saying that they will make more money off of ad sales. Ad sales is a very different thing than just having people using a free service. And also, it doesn't take into account whether it's so overvalued to begin with that it won't make back its original valuation.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right with that. Talking about privacy, we have a lot of good segues today, actually. It seems like everything ties in
so nicely to everything. The next story today.
Yeah, it's never been like that. New York State, there's been a bill introduced to ban anonymous online commenting. And we've discussed this a couple times. Anonymity is a big part of the internet, and the reason why certain things happen on the internet, certain people are able to state their opinions and comment on things without feeling that their privacy is being violated. Yeah, so now the story is that the bill, the Internet Protection Act, S06779, states that anyone that complains about an anonymous comment, I guess, is that true? I'm having my browser's locked up, so I'm trying to go based on.
When anybody complains about an anonymous comment, the website must make the commenter attach their real name to the comment, or the anonymous comment would be, by law, have to be removed.
So you have to kind of state who you are when you're complaining.
Yes.
That is the beginning of the end, in my opinion, for anonymity on the internet.
Yeah. Well, it might just be. I don't know. I mean, is there anything to this? It's in the state legislature, though, right?
Yeah. And we don't know. And this is the scary thing. I haven't heard anything about it until today, and I live in New York, so this is not getting too much coverage in any way. So you'd be legally bound to reveal your identity The accused commenter will also be required to verify that his or her IP address, legal name, and home address are accurate.
Yeah, if I had to place a bet, I would think that this is going to be shot down on everything ranging from enforceability, how they can't enforce that outside of their own state, let alone even within it, probably all the way up to First Amendment laws. I hope this just dies off quickly.
I don't know, but do you see other states following this? That's the only thing that scares me is if one state passes it, you're also going to have other states, starting to like, well, New York passed it. Here we go. Everything just starts tumbling down.
Well, I think, the issue is always enforceability. I mean, I think it might actually even be true that all you'd have to do is move your servers, just have no physical presence in the state of New York, and they could do nothing about it.
Yeah, this is scary. I mean, it really is. They're saying that this is going to prevent mean-spirited attacks.
Yeah, that's the other really kind of chilling and weird thing about this. It was introduced in order to slow down mean-spirited political attacks, which is like, I mean, isn't that the definition of what the First Amendment is supposed to protect?
Yeah, the state that you could go and say something about, a company or a politician and not feel like you're going to be in trouble for it,
Exactly. In fact, the article here on Ars Technica mentions the Federalist Papers as being anonymously written back when they were doing the Constitution.
Yeah, we lost Suncast once again. I don't know what's going on with the connection. I don't see it being me because everything else is connected on this machine. But to kind of go back to the Facebook thing, I know he wanted to go back into this, and then we could do our picks. But Facebook is possibly looking to buy a browser, and this is interesting to me. And this would really be something that I could see Facebook getting involved in. They're possibly looking at buying the Opera browser. Reports are coming in that they're looking to expand, and what better way and that's to get into the browser brand. Opera already has a following. It's a pretty decent browser software-wise, but can you see a Facebook browser being put on the market and being successful? I think they could be very successful at this, and
Really?
Yeah, because think about how many people would use it tapped inside of Facebook. How many people would just search?
And you think more so than like an extension. I think I look at the history of alternative browsers. How news reports said this week Chrome may have finally surpassed Internet Explorer and surpassed Firefox. But look how long it took Firefox to reach that mark, and look how much it took Chrome. I don't see Facebook investing the under the hood speed improvements and optimization that Google does, or that they even know for the web technologies that Google does. Yeah, and also, isn't Opera based on what is it, KHTML, or one of the same Gecko, or one of the same things that Safari and Chrome are based on?
I'm not too sure. That does make sense, though. Suncast, the Opera story. I know you're back now.
Yes.
We were covering that. What do you make of it? Because I was actually saying that I believe that they could be very successful having their own built-in browser in their interface.
Like Flock or Rockmelt?
Yeah.
Because we know how well those two browsers did.
Well, no, but I mean, but Opera is a successful browser. Opera does well. Opera does really well. I mean, they have a niche, but it's a good
in their
browser.
niche. Yeah, I mean, they do well amongst people who know how to. They do well amongst people who know how to choose a web browser, but that's a very small percentage of the population.
I guess, but what if you force people to use it?
No.
Well, how would they do that?
Here's my concern about this is that we already have a lot of concern on the internet about websites tracking us and our information that they collect from it. If Facebook, which is known to collect all this information, has a browser out there, how do we know that they're not going to misuse the information that they collect from us? How do we know that?
We don't.
That even if there's a website that does not have the Facebook button on it, they're going to be able to collecting information about us and what websites we visit.
Well, we don't. That's the thing.
That's my
also
concern
with
with all of
Microsoft's
this
heavy investment in Facebook. I doubt that they would really try to compete with IE. I think more likely, in fact, we'd see a tie-in between Facebook and the new Internet Explorer.
See, I can see them using this as far as a mobile app goes, because that is the only place that they're really being used, as far as downloads go. I'm not talking about a browser. So what if, you have a search function in your app and you could just use it that way? It would be a
sort
mobile,
of like the new Yahoo Access browser.
Kind of, yeah. So what's the story with that, Suncast? And then we'll do our picks, because you were telling me about this today, and it seems pretty interesting.
Access is a browser extension and a mobile browser. There's two different things. On the desktop, for Firefox and Chrome, there's the Access extension, which allows you to sync bookmarks and a couple of other things, I believe, as well. With Yahoo, its main purpose is for searching anything. It does search in a different way, where it tries to cut out the middleman, where you don't see links and pages of results anymore. They kind of do away with that, where half the screen kind of becomes your search results, and it'll actually display thumbnails of the website so that you can choose the website you want to go to based on what it looks like. That's how this normally works. And on, I believe, iOS, there's only the iOS that it has a actual browser for. And the browser isn't necessarily terribly bad or anything like that. It works. It's kind of neat. But then again, it also has an issue where they came out and they said that, well, it does show its private key information so that anybody could actually spoof it. And next time you update, it'll actually send all that information of whatever website you're browsing to the attacker.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a really interesting concept. If they can work on it a little bit more, I think it'll be really cool.
Yeah, I would love to see what happens with it in the long run. Very surprised that Yahoo's doing this.
Yeah, it kind of does it does search in a different way. We've seen how Google and Bing pop up like the web pages now when you hover over the link. What they're doing is they're taking that whole search results page out and replacing it with the actual thumbnail of the website. So you don't actually see a whole bunch of information anymore. You just see the thumbnail of the website.
Yeah, very interesting. It is almost we're almost approaching the end of the show, and it's time to do our picks of the week, guys. Every week, Suncast, myself, and Eric decide or pick a product, a website, anything that we liked for that week that has to do with technology. Eric, you want to go first this week?
Sure. So my pick isn't software. It's actually a fact and a set of articles and things you can learn about if you're interested that explains how the myth of high resolution audio, not lossless, but actually 24-bit, 96 kilohertz, or higher than CD quality, higher than DVD quality audio is a myth. You cannot hear the difference. And so when you see these companies like HD Tracks that sell these, high-end for audiophiles, Super Audio CD, what's the other thing? And I think a famous musician was supposedly talking with Steve Jobs before he died about the need to put 24-bit audio into iTunes.
Yeah.
Even the Beatles, when their catalog was remastered, they came out with 24-bit versions. It was 44.1, 24-bit. Now, I knew enough about audio because I did take an audio class in college, and at that point, I learned how 24-bit, the only reason to have 24-bit versus 16-bit is noise floor. Oh, I should name the website, shouldn't I? The easiest way to get this is if you just Google the phrase 24/192 music downloads and why they make no sense. It's also at xiph.org, xiph.org, Xiph. This is from the group of, I think they're just volunteers that are responsible for the OGG and the Theora Codex, that open source group. So some very smart people there. There's also a video on there that is a primer, sort of an introduction to digital sampling theory, a little video that the author of this article made. And it's a great resource. If you're curious about this, they've got links to other things, other studies, well cited, some good diagrams explaining why CD quality is really the best you ever need. So again, with the bit depth, that's just dynamic range. And if you've learned about the so-called loudness wars, or you've ever looked at a waveform of a CD, you know that CDs really only have about 3 decibels for pop music or for rock or anything made nowadays, about 3 decibels of headroom. So having, the exponentially greater depth of dynamic range, quietness before you hit that noise floor down at the bottom for CDs or for regular pop music is irrelevant. And then also the 192 sampling rate, turns out 44.1 is all you need, because the Nyquist sampling theory shows us, the theory of sampling rates is that in order to produce a frequency like, say, 20 kilohertz, the highest range humans can hear, you need only double that to reproduce that. So 44.1, 48 kilohertz, those are fine. Interestingly, on the analog to digital conversion, the original capture of the sound, that's when it makes sense to oversample, because then you avoid the distortion that comes when higher frequencies sort of alias themselves down into the audible frequencies. And they show that because of this, end user delivery, like a download, like a FLAC download or a lossless CD purchase that is a super high sampling rate, you are putting in all this inaudible frequencies that go way beyond the range of human hearing. In consumer grade audio gear, that actually causes distortion in the inaudible frequencies that becomes audible in the audible frequencies.
that's very
So having
interesting.
super high sampling rates is not actually an audiophile benefit to the sound. It actually harms the sound quality.
That's very interesting. That's very,
Yeah,
very
sh-
interesting.
Sure
What's the
changed my
website
mind.
again?
What?
What's the website again?
It's ziff.org, and the way to get to the article is to Google just 2492 music downloads and why they make no sense. And let me see, the other way to get to that was 2492 music downloads are very silly indeed is the alternate title to get to that article. And from that article, you can link to or it has the links to the videos and the other cited sources.
Yeah, we'll put this in the show notes because that's very interesting, and I know a lot of people are going to be interested to read that. Some may agree, some may
It's going to spark
disagree.
some debates. You can be
Yeah.
sure. This audiophile stuff came back in to discussion also because people are, the whole there's a hipster market now for vinyl. People are claiming again vinyl sounds better than CDs, and the whole. I mean, they go into such science when you test these things scientifically with true double blind or triple blind tests where you don't even know if the AB, they call it ABX testing,
Yeah.
where you choose one the other, and then the other you don't even know whether it's switched or not. In those kinds of tests, the analog gear caused by vinyl and other analog problems and distortion always causes audible distortion, but the CDs and the digital audio remains perfectly pristine throughout.
Yeah, and you know what it is with the vinyl? I have a lot of vinyl. I collect
Do
a
you?
lot of vinyl. Yeah, I'm a big vinyl fan. Not because I consider it to be a much better sound than a CD. I personally feel, and this is, depending on the system that you have and the compensation of your speakers, it's a warmer sound. And I like that sound. But it also distorts after a while. The quality goes away. So there's a lot of cons to it, but I do like vinyl. I kind of do like the hisses and the pops. I kind of, it gives a different type of sound to it. They're totally different, but I do feel that a CD is better.
Yeah, so ultimately what it came down to is that even when you compare the same album on both vinyl and CD, I mean back in the 80s and 90s when everything was first being re-released, then you'd get the biggest difference in masters. But even now when like a contemporary band puts out both a vinyl and a CD, still the differences you're hearing according to these articles and these scientific tests are through the differences in mastering and the difference in equalization curve. So it actually is a different audio signal that you're hearing with different mastering processes. So that those are what cause the audible differences, not the medium being vinyl or analog or a certain sampling rate.
That's very interesting, actually. We'll put that up on the website again once the show is posted. We'll put it out. I don't know what Suncast pick was. He is not here because he is rebooting. I don't know if it's him or myself, but I will go and do my pick of the week. My pick of the week is a product. Eric, do me a favor. Can you send me the link when we're done with the show?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. My pick of the week is a product. I recently got an SSD drive, and we installed it today. I'm just trying to pull it up now, 256 SSD, because I closed it out. And I have to tell you, I didn't really know how much of a difference an SSD would make. I've heard a lot about it. Everybody that gets it loves it. They say boot time is dramatically increased on the computer. It's much faster. So I got the crucial 256 gig M4 to 2.5-inch solid-state drive, set of 6. Great drive, and it was on sale this week for $199. It was $200 for a 256, lower than anything I've seen currently on the market. Pretty fast. So I installed it. I did the format. Windows installed instantly. I mean, it was crazy how fast Windows installed. When you're installing any kind of software, let's say Office, that is when you will see the difference. When you're copying files over from an SSD to an SSD, or when you're, writing to the disk, you'll see a difference. You're not going to see major CPU performance boosts. That's not what this is for. This is for boot time, shut time, installation time. One thing is when you're doing those Windows updates, everybody knows when you do a clean install and you got to do all those updates one by one, not only does it take a while to download, but it does take a while to install all those updates. It is instantaneous. It is so fast when you're installing these files. You don't even know, because there were times that I'm like, you know what, I'll go take a shower. By the time I get back, it may be finished. It was done by the time I went in the shower. I mean, it was super, super fast. So it's a great buy right now. I believe there's a $39 increase to the price. It was originally $199 at the start of the week. Now it's $239.99 on Amazon. Definitely a great buy. They also have deals on 128. So if you want to go with something smaller, I think for like $99 you could get a 128 drive, and that's the cheapest that I've seen. And it's great to see the prices are finally starting to calm down on these things.
Nice.
I mean, it's really, really low. I think 64 gig is $78 now. It's not bad.
Wow.
Not bad at all. So what I did, I bought a 500 gig for storage, Western Digital 500 gig drive, and then I have my 256 just to write the video to when we're recording, and then I'll just transfer it over. But I thought it's a pretty good buy. Amazon.com, check it out. It's a Crucial 256 gig M4 solid state hard drive. Eric, thank you for coming on again. As always, ericlanigan.com for all Eric Lanigan information. Also follow him on Twitter at Eric Lanigan. And pretty much those are the two places, right?
That is true. Those are the places. Thanks for having me on.
If you're having a podcast, anything, it's all on Eric's site, so you could go check it out. There's Suncast. I'll say goodbye for him. Amadeus.com if you're an up-and-coming musician, or if you like indie music, if you like independent artists doing cover songs, it's Amadeus.com, Amadeus.com. You can also follow him on Twitter, Amadeus on Twitter. And, of course, you can check out all our shows here at the GFK Network at gfknetwork.com. And you can subscribe to us. We're on iTunes. We're on the Zoom. Leave a comment. Do whatever you want to do. But that is all for this week. We'll see you all next week on Tech News Weekly. Good night, everybody.